What's going on, guys, and welcome to The Guide. My name is Valerio. You may also know me as Stallion. And before we get into the video, I wanted to remind everybody that we launched an Instagram page last week for The Guide. So of course, if you're interested, check out the link in the description. Give us a follow and enjoy the content on there as well. In terms of today's topic, I wanted to go over some defending tips and more specifically a tutorial on the offside trap, which is a really handy tool that I myself have been using a lot more in FIFA 20 in order to help me completely avoid, or at the very least make certain situations much less frequent. Now, for those of you who don't know, the offside trap is a defensive tool that you can manually trigger yourself, and every time you do so, you push your defensive line further up the pitch. I find that quite important, as more often than not, defenses in FIFA 20 drop back even without being instructed to do so, which leaves a ton of gaps to your opponent where they can shoot in and make use of the extra space. As a result, really frequent goals that you concede are almost too simple, where your opponent can just pass into a striker, turn, and shoot. So without further ado, let's get into the commands so you can learn how to manually trigger an offside trap yourself. Even though I would classify this as an advanced mechanics, the buttons are really simple. It becomes complicated when you consider the most efficient hand position when performing the offside trap and the timing of it in game, both factors which we'll go over really soon. Nonetheless, to manually trigger an offside trap, you will click the bottom arrow twice using the D-pad on your controller. And for both PlayStation and Xbox, the D-pad is located on the left-hand side of the controller. The first time you press the bottom arrow on the D-pad, you will see a bunch of options appear on the bottom of the screen. In my case, it appeared on the left-hand side because my team here in this scenario is attacking from left to right. In the second half, it would have been on the opposite side of the screen, therefore the right side. As you can see, there are various options, but today we're only concerned with the offside trap, which, as the display suggests, it requires us to press the bottom arrow a second time. Once we do that, our defense pushes up altogether. And it's also important to note that there is a cooldown effect to the offside trap, so you won't be able to spam one consecutively after the other. Now let's get into the most efficient way to use the D-pad on your controller. That way you can perform the offside trap without having to forget or let go of other important buttons. Before we get into the examples which show how and when to use it in game, it's really important for me to show you guys how to efficiently press the button for the offside trap. And you're going to want to get this down, because if you don't, you will not be able to multitask as you perform an offside trap. Now, I'll show you guys with an Xbox controller soon, but the obvious problem when using a PS4 controller is that the most comfortable way of performing the offside trap would be with your left thumb, leaving your left analog completely unused. So what I like to do is compensate by using my index finger on the left hand, which allows me to leave my thumb on my left analog stick, and it naturally moves my middle finger to the L1 button in case I need a quick player switch. If we move over to Xbox, the same problem exists, so if I do use my left thumb to perform the offside trap, the left analog stick gets ignored, which is not what you want. However, I can't use the same technique that I just used on PlayStation because the controller is just simply set up differently. So in this case, if I would be playing on Xbox, I think the best way to perform an offside trap is to use the right thumb, and you will leave the right analog alone and unused, but you still have your index finger on your left hand to press the LB button for a quick switch if you really need to. Now let's move on to some in-game examples just so we can show you guys how the offside trap can and should be used. Like I said in the beginning of the video, in FIFA 20, but also in the past few years, one of the most common ways to concede a goal is simply due to a simple pass into the striker who just turns and shoots. One way I have found to limit this space that is created is by using the offside trap, where the defensive line runs up, gets closer to your midfielders, closing the dangerous space where opponents' attackers like to hang out. All in all, this sounds great, but this technique is difficult not only because it's hard to get used to it, but also because if performed incorrectly, it can give away tons of space. If we take a look at this example, you'll notice how important it is to only use this tool when you know your opponent will perform a pass horizontally and not vertically to the striker. Now, if we play this again in slow motion, you'll see that I'm clearly cutting the passing lanes because my main concern is his striker hovering on the edge of my box. Once I've done that and that happens, I know that his only option is to pass it horizontally onto his other midfielder, and this exact moment is my cue to perform the offside trap. throw my opponent off, and close the gap between my midfield and my defense. When it's all said and done, he is clearly affected by it, and he still attempts the same pass he would have tried either way, and it's a super easy interception as he was clearly expecting more space for the pass assistance to kick in, but we managed to close it off with the offside trap. Even though this tool will completely stop some entry passes to the striker, it's not always possible. Sometimes the ball will get there either way, but the good news, however, is that it allows you to defend against the striker further away from the goal compared to if you had not used this tool to begin with. This example illustrates that and my general thought process when using this tool. My opponent has the ball with De Jong, and although he has an offensive player wide open, in this situation I still deemed it okay to offside trap because I knew that my defense would still be behind him if he had received the ball. Because as the play proceeds, he decides to pass it off to the side, we do another offside trap, and we notice that at the end of it all, he has two more strikers that we need to be worried about. Usually this would be really annoying and tough to defend, but because we pushed the defense higher up the field, I felt comfortable to be aggressive and pile on the pressure. As a result, it was really easy for me to push forward with my defender, get him in front of and close to his striker, and intercept the pass that I knew was coming. Defending a 4v3, at least for me, is much easier when you can push the whole situation a few meters away from the edge of the box and eliminate the threat of a long shot. To wrap the talk on offside trap up, it's kind of a weird tool to get used to at the start, but when you start learning when to do it, there are some clear benefits to it. It's really important to time it correctly when you know you've covered the passes vertically towards your box and your opponent only has horizontal options left. At that point, you'll be able to safely trigger the offside trap and push your defensive line further up the field. Best case scenario, you'll be completely able to avoid all the situations where the opponent's striker receives the ball really close to your box. Sometimes the striker will get the ball either way, but like I showed you guys, it'll either throw your opponent off or will still allow you at the very least to defend further up the field and give you a larger margin for error. I hope you guys found this useful. It has been a great tool for myself and my own defensive gameplay. If you did, don't forget to drop a thumbs up, turn on notifications for more tips and tutorials in FIFA 20. That's going to be it from me today, and until next time, peace out.